Patrick, we had a great community activity this month, over 2 community calls, where Claire Blackadder and members of the CDM work group led a 2-session workshop on the common data models. The second actually one that they've led this year, and I know there are several others planned. What stood out to you about that workshop?
Well, one of the main foundations of our entire community is open community data standards, and the OMOP common data model is the reference standard that we're trying to get all of our data across our community into, so that we can actually start to use that data to generate evidence. And one of the things that becomes very clear is there's a continuous education process that needs to be understood so that everybody could really understand exactly how to use the OMOP common data model and all of the work that's actually necessary to go into transforming some source data into this reference data model. And so I thought it was really a really good set of sessions that and really appreciative of Claire, Frank, Anthony, Maxim, Melanie, Kristen in providing their insights to the rest of the community about what it takes to standardize data and how to get to that point so that you can start that journey to evidence.
Yeah, for anybody who missed that session, either of those sessions, those are available in this newsletter now. And fittingly, the next week we talked about really a key component of the CDM is the standardized vocabularies and how important they are for community research. I know you were part of that along with Michael Kaufels and Christian Reich. What to you was important? Why was it important to have that session so quickly after the CDM session?
Well, the vocabulary is really instrumental to the OMOP common data model. The standardized vocabularies is the mechanism by which we can actually speak the same language when we conduct analysis across all of our data sources. And Melanie covered in the CDM workshop what it takes to use the Odyssey standardized vocabularies in the ETL process of standardizing your data. But one of the things that not everybody in our community has a full appreciation and understanding of is what it takes for us to actually develop and evaluate this vocabulary. And so Mick did a really good job of introducing the vocabulary team, showcasing the work that has already been done and all the resources that are available, but also trying to highlight how we need to continue this community effort to build out the vocabulary. And while Melanie talked about the use of the vocabulary for ETLs, I wanted to really highlight the fact that this standardized vocabularies represents one of the world's richest medical ontologies, and that actually can be used as an analytic structure to answer questions as part of the evidence generation process. And very oftentimes, there's information sitting there in the vocabulary that can enable research to be done, but people just don't know exactly how to use it. And so we wanted to be able to showcase that. And I really appreciated that Christian walked through his kind of assessment about where we are as it relates to the content of the vocabulary in its current state, as well as the process that we are following to develop the vocabulary, and also providing us some very clear guidance about where we want to go. The vocabulary is not a finished product, but it's really something that is a continuing journey in our community, and really wanted to make sure that everybody understood how they could contribute and support this effort moving forward.
After we had these great sessions on the common data model and vocabularies, ultimately all of this is to help empower the ability to do open science research and research on real world data. And to do this, there are certain best practices within our community, and one of them is the concept of reproducibility, and that's something that we were talking about at the symposium last year, and obviously a lot of work is still being done on that. And I thought that was a great session we had at the end of the month with Anna Strapolitz, Martin Schumi, and Asia Golazar discussing kind of a lot of topics around reproducibility. Why was that so important to have?
Well, I think one of the things that challenges our entire scientific discipline is knowing whether or not we've actually generated reliable evidence. And we conduct a lot of observational studies, but we don't necessarily know that the evidence we produce is trustworthy and actually warrants being used for decision making. And there are some basic tenets of what it actually takes to make evidence reliable. And one of the most basic one is something we all learned in elementary school science classes, which is about reproducibility. The idea that a scientific experiment is something that some independent scientist should be able to reconduct and produce the same result. And actually, as a discipline, observational data analytics is an area where we don't even necessarily live up to that basic expectation of scientific rigor. And so it was really valuable for us to have an honest conversation about where we are as a field as it relates to reproducibility. We saw Anna's work highlighting that even when we have a published paper that describes a particular study really well done, that independent researchers have a very difficult time trying to reproduce that finding. We heard from Martijn talking about how the real solution to this is about developing standardized analytic modules as open source code that basically provide Lego bricks that allow us to fit together to produce standardized processes that everybody can reuse. And what was particularly exciting was hearing Asya talk about the Roux Center's effort in establishing a reproducibility service, and seeing her talking about the process that she's following for the first large-scale study, and inviting our community to join her in this reproducibility effort. So I really hope that this continues to be a core tenet of the work that we do in the community.
You can really sense the excitement, around the community about how we're generating this real-world evidence, and even to go back to the CDM workshop. Those videos already have been watched, I think, almost over 400 times within the last couple of weeks. And it shows kind of the hunger for knowledge. And that's what makes what we have coming up in October, I think, all the more exciting. We announced that, obviously, the Odyssey Symposium will be held in person October 14th to 16th in Bethesda, Maryland. And registration is open for the main conference on Friday, as well as for this new full-day tutorial on Saturday, October 15th, which is kind of an introductory journey from data to evidence, kind of using Odyssey tools and best practices. It's a really exciting concept, a really exciting day, especially, I think, for newcomers of the community who really want to learn kind of a little bit about, everything that happens in the community and kind of how they can get started. I know we have great faculty. We have a great agenda. Why do you think a day like that can really, or how do you think a day like that can really impact both newcomers and then the community in general?
Within the Odyssey community, I'm really proud about the fact that we have a lot of educational resources to try to help newcomers in the community and others that are continuing on the journey. We've got tremendous educational resources such as the Eden Academy. We've previously offered really rich tutorials. But one of the things we keep hearing over and over again is sometimes it's hard to actually get a complete big picture of all of the steps that are along the way from the journey from data to evidence. Whether it be a newcomer who just doesn't know what Odyssey's doing, or whether it be someone who's really specialized in a particular area, we continue to hear that the people that are focusing on data standards don't necessarily understand how that work translates all the way to the people performing statistical analysis at the end. And so we thought what better way to try to bridge that gap than to create a tutorial that really provides a little tasting of the entire journey from data to evidence. And so this year, for the first time, we'll be offering this tutorial that actually walks through the steps of taking a given data set, having a particular research question, and walking through all the steps of standardizing the data to the OMOP Common Data Model, defining and evaluating cohorts, characterizing, producing characterization analyses, performing population-level effect estimation studies, and patient-level prediction studies, to give everybody an understanding of how all the pieces actually fit together, and to provide them pointers to resources so that if anybody's interested in any particular topic, they know the wealth of resources that are available in the Odyssey community to go after and explore further. So I'm really appreciative of Claire, Melanie, Asya, Gautam, Kristen, Martijn, Jenna, George, for being faculty members as part of this new tutorial. And I'm really looking forward to having new members of the community, as well as veterans who are learning to get a better sense of that big picture, to come join us on Saturday, October 15th at our Odyssey Symposium.
As I mentioned, that the symposium is going to be held at the Bethesda North Marriott Hotel and Conference Center. The symposium homepage is active now. You can find that in this newsletter and then on the Odyssey website. Registration and more information on the main conference on the 14th, the tutorial on the 15th, and then, and we'll get to what's going to happen on that Friday, what the work group activities are going to look like on the 15th and 16th. I mean, we have a couple more months of podcasts and newsletters to hit on those, but I was really excited about this tutorial. I wanted to get to it first so people really knew what they could expect, what they could get out of that day, and it is it's a capped attendance at some point, so people should take a look at it and hopefully join us on that day. As you mentioned, a really great faculty to take us on the full Odyssey journey, at least bits and pieces of it, on Saturday, October 15th. So looking forward to it. certainly before we get to October, we still have plenty of great community calls, a really exciting session of calls coming up in April that we're looking forward to, including a discussion on Darwin EU, the Odyssey Coordinating Center, plenty to be excited about. We've had great attendance at these calls and looking forward to continuing them. Thanks for joining, Patrick.
Thanks, Craig.